Right. Well, let me share this one. Vision. Okay. Vision is something that sometimes we have a tendency to discount. How do dreams evolve in your being? Whether it's a dream when you're, sleeping at night, but sometimes you could be on the bus, sometimes you could be at work and it's boring as you know what, and your mind wanders a little bit, and you can see yourself somewhere else, doing something else. You can see yourself running the company. You can see yourself having your own company. You can see yourself leading the next generation, or you can see yourself coaching your son's baseball team.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. It's an author podcast where we get to meet great authors from around the world and be inspired at the same time. And Arthur's here with me today, and I'm excited about this because we're going to get into his book and his story. He has so many great resources on his website for you to go check out. And he's a great voice in the community, wanting to help people see things from a more positive point of view. I think that's something we all need right now. I'm in Canada, we need it. Our great friends in America, we need it. And it's nice to have a refreshing voice to make things a little bit better in the world. Arthur, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you on the podcast.
Dave, thank you for having me. Yes, you believe Canada needs it.
Yeah.
I will testify that the United States of America needs it bad. Specifically, where I'm from, New York, we need some inspiration that's rooted in something different than what we've been attempting to be inspired by and inspired through. So I'm encouraged to be here with you. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Now you have a vast history that I'd love to kind of pull out a few points from, kind of give us some perspective on where you've come from and a little of your background. Can you share a little bit about kind of what brings you to our conversation today? There's so much to talk about, but
Yeah,
can you give us a capsulized version of you and your story?
Well, briefly, I'm knocking on 50 years old, so I can go back to youth when my life, to a degree, not birth, but life began as an entertainment DJ. I was a world traveling DJ.
Wow.
From the age of about maybe 14, 15 till my mid 30s. During such time, I was a Christian. I just was not a Christian that I wasn't the Christian I should have been. I wasn't a believer, but it was foundational in my life. I mentioned my faith because right around the age of maybe my mid 20s, I became convicted because of some of the things I was involved in and with, especially in the entertainment business. And I'm not knocking entertainment business. But there are practices and there are things that are going on in it that I don't believe actually help the future, meaning the generations to come. I think we're projecting something in many regards that's unhealthy. In the middle of all that, I became an entrepreneur, owned several businesses on Long Island, all around entertainment, and then I got into the beauty and barber salon business, owned a few of those, and had some food establishments. That's all through my 20s. But then when I got to my 30s, there were two very integral events in my life. There was first this calling from God to depart the entertainment business. And it was more or less like a very light, but it became a very definitive tug, meaning let's go. It's time to do this now. You've been procrastinating for some time. I departed, and my time in ministry really became strong when my mother passed away in 2013. So that kind of summarizes the early parts. From that point, I spent about 10 years in getting educated at Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma, as well as began a church. God led us to begin a church here in Eastern Long Island, a place called Aquebogue. No one's probably heard of Aquebogue from around America. East end of Long Island, beautiful place. Please come and visit at some point in time. Not just Aquebogue, but the entire east end of Long Island. And God placed upon me that we have struggles in terms of being the believers and Christians we should be. And he placed my focus on where, if anything else, when we have a problem, where should we begin? Normally, people say we should begin at the bottom. To a point, I agree, but who is leading the people who are quote unquote at the bottom? Who are the individuals who we turn to, we look towards, who are supposed to encourage, inspire us, and set the examples? Well, overall, it's the leaders. And what's been placed in my heart and now has evolved in my mind is that we do have struggles in leadership, not just in the Christian church, but in modern society. So my focus right now is on helping to reshape, helping to educate, to reform, to teach, but to inspire leaders to become who they are called to become.
Okay. All right. The idea about putting pen to paper and writing a book, was that something that somebody put in front of you and said, hey, I think this is something we need in this world? Or was it something different that made you decide that, hey, I think I need to write this book?
Yeah, my writing didn't actually begin with the book. It just began with essays.
Okay.
It evolved into a book, but kind of separately, sort of say. I like to write, and then I love to write. It depends what I'm writing about. You know, sometimes you write about things because it's necessary, but it's sort of like pulling teeth. You know it's going to bring a little discomfort, but at the same time, you like what that discomfort leads to. Then there's those enjoyable topics that you have to write about that, you know, you feel you're going to warm someone's spirit and, you know, get someone excited about something. Those led to the book because what was happening is the more I was writing, I was getting feedback from people, and I wasn't the only one seeing the challenges that leaders were facing. And at the same time, not too many people were trying to find or distinguish a remedy, which would be basic, that would avoid all of the leader hiccups and we call it failures that we see in the Christian church, but even outside. Even if we look at leadership today all around us, we're seeing some of the most important, basic, fundamental things that are missing, that I believe if they were remembered and at least minimally implemented, we would see something different. So that's where the book stems from. It's from encouragement from others, my peers. It's also based on what we've been all experiencing and witnessing, and even more, it's from my heart. It's something that I believe could be helpful to individuals, myself included, and any leader. This isn't just a leadership book for, you know, people of Fortune 500 companies, but it could be. It's not just for leaders in the church like pastors or deacons. It could be. It's also for leaders in the home. Yeah. It's not just for male leaders. It's for leaders because we have leaders all around us. We have the janitors in the school of leaders, the lunch people in the schools are leaders, the bus drivers are leaders. At the same time, mom and dad are leaders as well.
Yeah. So what would have been helpful for you early on as a writer in conversation if you were able to tune into a podcast back in the day, and here is two guys talking about writing? What could have been a helpful conversation or a helpful moment for you in the early days that might have just kind of helped shape your journey as a writer?
I think the benefit, if we stick to, you know, you mentioned podcasts, what podcasts have allowed, or even technology in itself have allowed, is different voices are now permitted to be expressed. You can hear different people's perspectives and experiences, not just on a negative round, but positive. You can see what's working, what's not working. So I just think by having more conversations in more diverse settings, you're able to receive more and to gain a better understanding of quite possibly what's needed. And when you learn what's needed, there's your inspiration. There's your purpose for writing, especially if something you say connects with me. If you say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with, or this is what's broken, or this is what's been working for me. Well, if I can relate to you and I have the gift of, let's say, penmanship, I can take what you're sharing, and if it echoes with me, then I'm able to get it, you know, obviously pen to paper. But at the same time, I not all, but I think a lot of writings that we saw just in the prior 2 or 3 decades, not all, but many of them are closeted. Many of them are opinionated, which are great, but how many of them are endorsed? How many of them are endorsed by other people where it can resonate in a larger audience or with a larger crowd?
What does a published book mean for you as a writer, as an author? I want to give perspective to a new author that's listening, kind of the
Mm,
opportunities that can present themselves by going
right.
through the process of getting this book out into the world. What's been your experience?
My experience, similar to others, a little different. When we put the book together, we did have some people interested in working with us, and we investigated a little bit, and then we pushed back and said, what we want to do is we want to see first where God was going to move, but second, we wanted to see if we truly had a voice.
Mm,
And with that, we plan on doing more works in the future, partnering with other people, but at the same time, we wanted to see what we could do on our own. So if there's any advice that I can give to anyone, um, don't follow my process. Follow the process that you receive in prayer.
mm,
Follow the process through your investigation and through your study, which is the best way to go. But here's the thing. Once you enter that process, see it all the way through because you will have voices, you will have, outside testimonies, witnesses, you'll get feedback that might not be fruitful to your journey. And overall, that's what publishing and bringing a book out is, a journey. It's not always about sales. Those sales are great, those sales are important. The journey itself is when you're able to go like this.
yeah, there it is. Right.
When you can pull your book up and you can show your book,
Yeah.
the contents of this is a labor of love. It's everything that you poured into it over the last 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And at that point, that should be a trophy or a sense of victory in itself. But once you get this in your hand, that's when the true work actually begins.
Right. Do you see your book as a platform, opening doors for more opportunities to speak to people and get in front of other audiences?
I'm talking with you.
There you go. Right? It is.
Yes. Yes. It presents opportunities, and then again, it depends on what your motive is.
Right.
Obviously, there's some people's motive is to get paid. Nothing wrong with cashing some checks and taking care of yourself if that's what it is. But if you have a message, if you have something that you want to get out to the world, I believe that will motivate you more to make the sacrifices that are necessary. And again, any endeavor you enter into, podcasting, you'll start with 5 viewers. How do you get to 5,000? Well,
Yeah.
it's going to take some sacrifice and talking to people and meeting people and texting and emailing and doing all these things, getting hung up on, having people not respond to your emails. I mean, it's not about having a hard shell, but it's about understanding that's part of the process. And then also when you get to a point, as a pastor, my phone rings quite a lot.
Yeah.
As a pastor, in terms of someone who goes out and speaks, I get quite a few invitations, but it wasn't always like that. But now that it's like that to a degree, what I have to do is use discernment and pick where, when, and who. Not
Mhm.
every invitation is fruitful.
Right.
Not every engagement is meant for you. So you have to use your discernment to decide which ones are right. Will you get everything right? Absolutely not. Have I flunked and fallen short on just this journey recently? Yes, I have. It's okay that if you have a hiccup, here is where you fail. Ultimately, when you get down or get thrown down and you don't get back up,
Hmm.
you can get back up, dust yourself off, sit back down at the desk, revise your plan, and keep going.
Okay.
If you keep going, you'll see the fruit in your labor.
There you go. So, from your perspective, then, as a speaker, a leader, a pastor serving your community, how do you think that the stories and the content of your book is designed to help a reader? Can you kind of explain to the reader kind of what they can anticipate by grabbing a
Right.
copy of your book?
Effective is a book that surrounds gaining an understanding of leadership failure first,
Okay.
because that's all around us. And I mentioned earlier, it's not just in a church setting, though it's a Christian themed book. we have leaders in many different categories in our lives. The question is, why do we see men leaving their homes and leaving their children behind? Why do we see preachers or pastors, religious leaders getting caught doing unethical things surrounding money and sexuality? Why do we see business people being indicted in such a way?
Right.
So we point those things out, and what we offer is a foundational remedy with 7 keys that, if these 7 keys are implemented during training, during processing, as well as every single day as you approach your job, your career, and your calling, these things remind us and they empower us to stay on course to the goal, whatever the goal may be that we set, the goal that we may have in terms of what are we looking for with any plan that we have. We're all looking for success. Success can be defined many different ways, obviously financially, obviously growth and development, but there's also a wholesomeness that we're looking for. No one wants to do anything and find success and say, I want this success to lead me to feel bad. I can't capture anyone saying that. So those 3 things are what's gained, but there needs to be a foundational understanding of what it is we need to capture. In my lane, it's from God. These are things that God provides us that will help us. And that's what the book offers. It gives us some commentary, it gives some personal experience from myself, obviously some biblical connection. At the same time, it gives you a challenge to implement, at the same time, review these things, because if they're implemented, they will work in your life.
Can you pull out one of these keys from the 7 and share a story that kind of substantiates why that key in particular is a part of this book?
Right. Well, let me share this one. Vision.
Okay.
Okay. Vision is something that sometimes we have a tendency to discount. How do dreams evolve in your being? Whether it's a dream when you're, sleeping at night, but sometimes you could be on the bus, sometimes you could be at work and it's boring as what, and your mind wanders a little bit and you can see yourself somewhere else, doing something else. You can see yourself running the company. You can see yourself having your own company. You can see yourself leading the next generation, or you can see yourself coaching your son's baseball team. These are visions that come to us, and they come to us for a reason. The question is, without that vision, without us getting that image, how do we evolve from where we are to the next stage? As human beings, we're seers, meaning when we see something, it sticks to us. That's why things like concerts, things I used to go to, are more powerful than the record. Now think of the record. Right. Imagination is great, but when you go see the show, it blows your mind. You love the song that much more. That's why in the 80s, I gave you my age earlier, music videos in the 1980s would take a song to another level.
Right.
Because you had the image of it.
Right.
So when you're given a vision, how do you respond to it? Do you dismiss it? Oh, it's hogwash and it's for dreamers and that's not real. Or do you slowly start to understand that what's being painted in your mind is your future? So we talk about the importance of visions, not spooky visions, but realistic, inspiring visions.
Right.
That will show you that are placed in your mind and your heart, that will show you what could happen, what should happen if you do X, Y, and Z, that will lead you to, this place of where your future exists.
And there's a biblical connotation to that as well. If you don't have a vision, it doesn't end up well for you, according to the Bible, right? Can you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, we can look at Daniel in the Bible. Yeah. He had visions. Yeah. Joseph in the Bible could foresee his brothers kneeling down before him. Now,
Right.
that wasn't something his brothers were encouraged by,
No.
because, as a matter of fact, that led to the jealousy.
Yeah.
But just think, if he never shared that vision, his brothers wouldn't have betrayed him. He
Yeah.
wouldn't have been sold off as a slave. He wouldn't have had the encounter with Potiphar, the cupbearer, the baker. He never would have landed before Pharaoh. When he landed before Pharaoh, and he was able to interpret Pharaoh's dream, he became the governor. When he became the governor, Pharaoh's dream was what he interpreted, so that he was able to have the 7 years handle properly, the 7 years of surplus, the 7 years of famine. So here's
Yeah.
my point with all that. Just say he did not accept the vision or the dream that was upon him. None of those other things wouldn't have happened. Number one. Number two, he would have never stood before Pharaoh. Number three, interpreted his dream. But number four, became the governor. But what was the point of him becoming the governor? He became the governor over Egypt, so that the entire Israel, as well as Egypt, all the people in the land, would be able to sustain during these horrible times, including his family, who would end up becoming the future. The 12 tribes would be the future of the faith. So again, the visions that God gives to us and the visions we receive have a much bigger purpose than what they seem at the time. But we need to know how to respond to them accordingly and know their importance, and that they lead to a great purpose.
Yeah. Without a vision, the people perish. It's kind of right
Exactly.
there, right? It needs to be there. What about people who don't understand somebody's vision? How they kind of pull back from somebody who has a vision? Your community goes, wait, that seems big, audacious. It seems like I don't feel comfortable in your presence because you know you have a vision and I don't. And people start to pull back a little bit from people with vision. How do we navigate that?
Well, we can go back to even Joseph. He had a vision. It didn't put his brothers in the best position. So what happened? They betrayed him.
Yeah.
They sold him into slavery. What we speak about in the book, sometimes that when we have visions, you have to anticipate the unfortunate around you. And you will have people around you who will, I hope that they don't sell you off into slavery like Joseph, but at the same time, even for myself, just think about it. I'm a DJ, a very, very well-known DJ who did very well in the field, very popular, and my town was really with me. But when this church thing called, I was viewed as crazy. I was nuts. What are you doing? Why? How would you betray us? Wait a minute. Where's the us in all this? There's no us. But this is how people thought. So what happened? A lot of people who would consider me a friend, they weren't my friend anymore. A lot of people who, quote unquote, walked with me through that journey felt betrayed. And a lot of people discounted everything that I was doing. However, my focus, though it was painful and I did experience disappointment, I had to focus on what it was that was in here and in here. The vision is in your mind, it gets into your heart. And though there will be rough times, there are some things you will lose. There are some people who will fall astray. It's all part of the process. But you have to remember, the vision is leading towards something. It will culminate in something that, again, was projected in your head. So let me go back. In 2011, when all those things took place, effective was the last thing on my mind.
Really?
Writing had there was let me go even further. Going back to college was not on my radar. Not at all. It was not something. When I say it wasn't something on my radar, if you brought it to me in 2011, I would have laughed in your face. It was not something I wanted to do. But here's the point. When the vision came over me in terms of you're going to be a pastor over a select people and you're going to teach scriptures, I laughed. I love the Bible, but who's going to listen to me?
Right.
Who has interest in me? I'm the DJ guy. I'm the guy on tour with the rap guys.
Yeah.
This is foolish. But then once I stepped into the vision and was guided by God into the vision, those things that were a little cloudy started to become more and more and more clear. So here in 2025, this was never, ever. I never said in 2010, one day, 15 years from now, I'll have a book release. I never would have said that.
Really?
So I'm hoping that there are some people who are watching you that may be in the same state where they may be a plumber. Nothing wrong with being a plumber. They may be a school teacher. Nothing wrong with being a school teacher. They could be working at McDonald's. Nothing wrong with working at McDonald's.
Yeah.
But there's something in your mind cooking, and you can see yourself evolving and transitioning to the next thing. Now, I'm not saying go quit your job.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is be prepared and respond accordingly, step by step, to whatever's in your mind and it's in your heart, because you may have something that pen has been sitting idle for some time,
Yeah.
and it might be ready to cook at any minute. So slowly make your way to doing what it is that's been in your mind and your heart, so that vision will ultimately become your reality.
My encouragement for a listener too, and somebody watching, is that the only person that can write your book is you. Like, I can't write Effective 7 Keys to Christian Leadership Success. I can't write your book. I could write a book. I can't write that book. So if you don't write this book, it's not going to exist.
Right. Exactly. And what happened was in 2023, I started to look around, and there's a measuring stick we have as Christians. And people don't like to acknowledge that, but there is. And another way of saying it, there's a standard that's been established, not by me, not by you, but by Christ. He sets a standard on where we should be and who we should be. He's not seeking perfection. Okay. He's looking for our intent in terms of us being compliant to him in his way and following him. And when I started to look at leaders, and I started to and I don't want to be specific, there was one leader who I loved this individual. I loved him, I admired him so much, and he impacted millions of college children all through what we would call the new millennium era, from 2000 forward. And unfortunately, he's passed away back in 2020 or 2021. But prior to that, there was some investigations regarding some of his extracurricular behavior. Now, here's the outcome from it. All of his teachings have been removed.
Really?
All those things that impacted me are no longer, you can't find them. His ministry shut down and it's gone. And his name has been, defaced or defamed in such a way. Now, again, I don't want to focus on that.
Yeah.
What I want to focus on is, how do we avoid that? How do we stop that? What's the remedy when someone goes the wrong path? Because some of us are going to fall short. Some of us are going to make mistakes, because none of us are perfect. So we need to have something in our possession. Obviously, the greatest book, in my view, ever written was the Bible.
Right.
But we need something to guide us back to Scripture if we've fallen from it. That's where effective. Effective is for us to strive with all of our being to be the effective leader that God has called us to be. And again, not just in the church, but in the professional world and in the home. Not just for men, but for women. Also for young people who are aspiring to be such in the future. You have young people on college campuses, young people in high schools and in middle schools. What's the standard on them being a leader? Well, is it subjected or is it established by the world?
Right.
Who's establishing it? So that's where effective comes from. A lot of it's from my personal witness and opinion, as well as a lot of testimony from other not just authors, but pastors and witnesses who have experienced, the unfortunate occurrences, but have also seen the greatest rebounds, the greatest comebacks, at the same time, the greatest inspirations from people all around the world.
Okay, so my challenge to you then, Arthor, is the word effective. We could take that word and remove it from the cover of your book. We could put passionate. We could put servanthood. There's a lot of other words that could take that space on the cover of that book. Why the word effective?
Effective is there, and it's used because the role of being a leader is not enough. Leader needs to re-become, no such word, but just stay with me,
Okay.
re-become. It needs to re-become a purpose for the leader to be effective, meaning my impact towards you, not just me being established in a role. And what we've been seeing is this person is a congressman, this person is a senator, but once they get in those roles, we don't hear anything from them.
Yeah.
Once they get in these roles, we'll say, okay, what are you doing for your community? You don't hear, you don't see, you don't witness. The impact isn't there. So, what type of leaders are we looking for in the world today? We want leaders who are effective, that are trailblazers. We want leaders that leave a mark. We want leaders that are inspiring. But here's the greatest thing we can have as a leader. When I grew up, back in the day, a long time ago, I would go to my great grandparents' house. There were two pictures on the wall when I walked in, and I remember this clearly. One was Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., but number two was John F. Kennedy. Both died before I was born, right? 63 and 68.
Yeah.
I'm born 76.
Yeah.
So why do you still have these pictures up? My great-grandfather said, if I can encourage my children to be like anyone, I want my sons and daughters to be ones who speak up for the truth like Reverend King. And I also want my children to know that they could be a president like John F. Kennedy Jr. To a point, they saw these two individuals as effective because they're worth pointing out and they're worth their children being encouraged. Be like them. Do what they do. The lanes are open. If you work hard, you can become what they were able to become. We don't hear that from many people today about the modern leaders that are around us. Those are effective leaders that will leave a mark. Now, keep in mind, we're talking about King and Kennedy, and we're 60 years removed from them.
Right.
Those are the leaders. Maybe not specifically them. Now, think about it. Both King and Kennedy had flaws. They made mistakes, bad judgments, fell short, but they left a mark from their work, but they also left a mark from what was in their heart. People were connected to them because they saw to a point what their motives were.
Yeah.
And their motive seemingly was a bit more than themselves, so much so that they gave their lives. Leaders today, they don't need to be assassinated, but they need to give their lives because a lot of leaders today, my friend, it seems the only person they're concerned with is themselves.
Yeah.
So who wants their children to be like him or her?
Yeah.
Now, mind you, you don't need the national stage because there are leaders around the corner. I go back to the schools. I go back to the Boys and Girls Clubs. I go back to coaches. There are leaders all around us. And those are the ones who I think we need to have their pictures on the wall because those are the ones who define what effective leadership is. And at the same time, what sets the standard? How do we know that they are effective? And what happens when they slip a little bit? That's where the book comes into play. We all can kind of see who this person can be and should be. This young person who has a voice and they're in 6th or 7th grade. We have something that we can give them to kind of guide them and say, hey, listen, vision is important. Prayer is important. Integrity is important. Stewardship is important. We're teaching you that these things have meaning and they'll create within you an identity that is important in you becoming the leader that the community and even the world needs to be.
In 2025, are you seeing a community looking for leaders? Are they looking for people to step up and to be a voice?
In 2025, I see communities crying for leadership. One of the major problems is the inability to define what effective leadership is. Let's just think of who is on the cover of magazines today. Wasn't that way 30, 40 years ago. Right. Just think of who's in the White House.
Yeah.
Wasn't that way 30, 40 years ago. So think about who wears the religious garb and what they do, on their personal time. Your personal time is still important
Yeah.
because that is where your integrity comes from.
Right.
So it wasn't that way 30, 40 years ago. Again, I mentioned King and I mentioned Kennedy because ultimately in both of what they did before they were assassinated, they were giving their lives to their work. When you're a parent, it's not about you anymore. It's about your children. But when you look at children today and you look at the ecosystem they grow up in, a lot of the parents, not all, but a lot of parents, they don't make their children a priority. They don't look at their children as the future of the world and needing to prepare them for what's to come to the best of their ability. There's a lot of parents who whose only concern is themselves, and this is why a lot of these young people are lost the way they are, doing the things they do. Just think about it. And I came up in entertainment. I was astonished at 28, 29 years old when there was a 15, 16-year-old kid on the stage, moving his body or her body in a sexual state and moving things, gyrating in ways. It was inappropriate. Parent was sitting right over there,
Yeah.
cheering them on. And again, some people might say, you're a conservative or you're a religious. Yeah, I get it. I don't want that for my child, and I don't want that for your child. And here's the reason why. I see what that leads to.
Right.
So at the end of the day, we need leaders. We need someone to stand up and not just say no, but to show that there is a different way for success, whether it's monetary or whether it's fame, or whether it's just having a good life. It doesn't have to come in such a way. We all know that, the negatives in the world that lead to death are on the rise. And even in modern society, they're now acceptable. When's the last time we mourned when a child got killed?
Mm-hmm.
The way this nation used to cry 25, 30 years ago when a child died. We don't mourn anymore. We turn the page.
Right.
It's not front page news anymore for our newspapers. It finds its way in, or it's a 24-hour story on social media.
Yeah.
Like we're not crying, but at the same time, when we say, well, that kid got killed in the drug trade or overdosed or a sexual whatever it is or whatever it might be, what we don't do is we don't say, well, where did they get the inspiration to do this? Who encouraged them to go this way? Who are they modeling their lives after? We don't ask those questions. And the reason why I believe we don't is because we're going to be forced to go deep and see that quite possibly the reason why this child has fallen in such a way is not just on the parents, it's on all of us. It's time for us to really stand up and say, we need better representatives of our community. We don't need to shun them. We need to lift them up. And I think one of the greatest ways is, what will help us, I'll say, is effective.
Okay. So the book is out in the world. It's exciting to have this. Arthur, I'm really excited for people to fall in love with this. I do have a question I want to wrap up with. I want to honor your time. But as far as connecting with you in the book, I do want to end off with a question here to wrap it up. But where do we go? Where would you like to send people for more information to be part of your world? I know you said you have a radio program as well.
Right.
There's a lot of great resources that you have for us. Where do you like to send us?
Yeah. Arthor L. Faber.com. Now, my name is a little unique. It's spelled with an O. So it's ARTHOR, the letter L, FABER.com. That's my website. That website connects to the church. It also connects to my leadership coaching. I do leadership coaching for leaders, trying to help leaders become who they're called to become at the same time. So it kind of all intertwines with everything that we've been blessed to be able to contribute to our community and do over the past decade plus. So find me on ArthorLFaber.com.
Excellent. We'll have a link for that in the show notes, as always, and encouraging everyone, when you buy, not if, but when you buy Effective, the book, make sure you leave a great review, because I know Arthur would love to hear your thoughts.
I love
Get your comments, right? It's really great information for our authors. The one thing, Arthur, that I notice anytime we start talking about faith, spirituality, our beliefs, it can become a division for someone listening where they're like, oh, I'm out. I'm done. As soon as they go down this path, I'm done. And they might not be here for the remainder of this episode together. And that saddens me because there's a lot of value here. For those people who believe to date that faith is a matter of a bunch of perfect people assembling on a weekend and living a perfect life, casting judgment on everyone else who's not as good as they are. And they just seem to be so great. And I'm so terrible. I don't feel welcome. I don't feel like I'm a part of that community, or they'll accept me because of who I am, what I've done, who I've become. Where do we go? You're trying to put positivity into the world, and that's what I really love and honor. Where do we get back to a point where when we bring up faith and who we are and what we believe and why it shapes our vision for how we live our life, where do we get back to the point where we're not dismissed because of what we believe, and people will still be able to listen and take things that will serve them? How do we get back to that part? You talk about vision. How do we get back there?
It's very simple but very difficult. And again, that itself is complicated. Here's where it's simple. I have learned many, many years ago that the only way we could resolve a problem when it comes to two different people or two different views is a conversation. I don't think that the Christian church, let's just go back to the 80s and the 90s, the Christian church was so high sprung that it refused to have a conversation with people who weren't against it. They just didn't understand it. I think today we're getting a little bit better, but while we were in a state of refusal, what was happening is the world didn't stop turning. And when the world stopped turning, there were other influences that came in that made that conversation a little bit more difficult. So how can we get to a point where we understand effective, though it is founded in Christian morals and standards, is for everyone? I think it's the same thing. It's a conversation. We need to talk. And part of talking doesn't involve with me just yapping. It involves me being quiet and listening to a different perspective. If I can hear what another person has to say, it's not my job to refute it. It's not my job to put them down. It's not my job to say you're wrong. We can build a bridge. So maybe, just maybe, when this bridge is formed, you may want to come over here and see what's going on. At the same time, I have to be willing to come over there and see what's happening on your side.
Yeah.
That's where understanding comes from. But it starts with just having a conversation, talking, but just as important, listen.
There you go. And I think all of us can do that today. And I think effective is going to help us as well to take and be a leader in our community, in our home, in our setting. This will be a great resource for us to learn and apply these 7 keys. It's excellent.
Thank you.
Arthur, thank you so much for making time to be with me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having more conversation with you in the future. There's a lot of value here, and there's a great heart behind all of this as well. So thank you so much for doing this.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, Dave.
Excellent. Everybody, all the information is always in the show notes. I know Arthur would love for you to come check out his radio program, grab a copy of the book, see all the resources on his website, the link in the show notes as always. And I would encourage you to again, reach out. I know he'd love to hear from you. And as you're listening to this, think of who you can also buy a book for and send them a copy as well. Arthur, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Appreciate it again.
Excellent. Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy. All I really care about is coffee, okay? I just gotta be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.